It's just before dawn, somewhere along the Nile more than 3,000 years ago. You're lying on the flat roof of a small mud brick house where you slept to escape the heat. The river is a dark ribbon in the half-light, and in a moment, you're going to start a day that looks almost nothing like the ancient Egypt in your head. Because when we picture ancient Egypt, we picture pharaohs, gold, towering pyramids, and slaves dying under the whip. But the pharaohs were a tiny handful of people. So what did a normal Egyptian, not a king, not a god, just a person, actually do hour by hour from sunrise to sunset? The answer is stranger than the myth. They had weekends, they called in sick, they went on strike, and they got paid in beer. One quick thing before we start the clock: they didn't have clocks. They told time by the sun, by shadows, by the rising and falling of the river. So treat the hours that follow as a modern guide to a very ancient day. And the thing that ruled that day wasn't the pharaoh, it was the river. Most Egyptians were farmers, and the whole year ran on the Nile's 3 seasons: the flood that drowned the fields, the planting in the rich black mud it left behind, and the race to bring in the harvest. And here's where the biggest myth quietly dies. During the flood, the land was underwater and there was nothing to farm, so that was exactly when many ordinary people went to work on the great monuments. The pyramids weren't raised by endless ranks of whipped slaves. They were built largely by paid, fed, seasonal workers, farmers with time on their hands while the Nile did its work. We found their villages, their bakeries, and their bones, with injuries that had been carefully set and healed. So your day. Around 5 in the morning, you wake before sunrise because there's no electric light to stretch the night and no clock to argue with. You wash if there's water. You leave a small offering or murmur a quick prayer to the household gods and the ancestors who, to you, are still part of the family. Then breakfast: bread, a few onions, maybe dates or figs, and beer. Egyptian beer was thick, cloudy, weak, almost a liquid bread, and people drank it all day long because it was food and because it was usually safer than standing water. Everyone drank it, even the children. By 6, you're working, because the early morning is the only cool the day will offer. If you're a farmer, you're out at the fields hauling water into the channels, pulling weeds, cutting grain, minding the animals. If you're a craftsman, you're already carving stone, shaping pots, working wood or metal. If you're a scribe, one of the lucky literate few, you're logging taxes, counting grain, assigning workers. And if you're on a building crew, you're dragging and shaping stone under a sky that's about to turn merciless. And it's one group of these workers who hand us the most astonishing record of all. In a village called Deir el-Medina lived the craftsmen who carved the royal tombs. They could write and they wrote down everything, so we know their working lives in incredible detail. They worked an 8-day stretch and then took 2 days off, a weekend, and they were paid not in money, which didn't exist yet, but in rations: grain, bread, fish, vegetables, oil, and beer. They also kept attendance, which means we still have the actual reasons men gave for missing work written down 3,000 years ago, and they are gloriously human. Ill, brewing beer, embalming his brother. His wife was giving birth. One man was off building his own house, and every so often the scribe simply notes that someone was being lazy. And then there's the moment that should stop you cold. Around 1157 BCE, under the pharaoh Ramesses III, the rations for these tomb workers showed up late. The men were hungry and they were owed, so they put down their tools, walked off the job, and refused to go back until they were paid. It is the first recorded labor strike in human history. Ordinary workers in the supposed age of all-powerful god kings sitting down and saying, "Feed us or nothing moves." By around 10, the heat starts to win and work pauses. You sit in whatever shade you can find with the others, drink beer, eat bread and vegetables. Tomb paintings actually show workers resting together like this on their break, a small, ordinary moment frozen for 3,000 years. And by midday, it's brutal. The sun can push past 40 degrees Celsius, over 100 Fahrenheit. So through the worst hours, roughly 11 to 2, almost everything slows to a stop. This is the main meal of the day, and then comes rest, a nap, some conversation, anything but standing in that sun. If it sounds like a Mediterranean siesta, that's basically what it was. Running quietly through this entire day is the work of women, which kept the whole civilization alive. Much of a woman's day went to grinding grain into flour by hand, hours of it, along with weaving cloth, brewing that endless beer, raising children, and running the household. Some ran trades of their own. And here's a detail that surprises people. Egyptian women could own property, sign contracts, and file for divorce rights that would vanish for women across much of the world for thousands of years afterward. As the worst heat eases around 2, the work picks back up, back to the fields, back to the workshops, back to the unfinished records, and runs through the afternoon. But the heavy labor winds down well before dark. Nobody wants to be hauling stone at dusk. By sunset, around 5 or 6, the family comes back together. Dinner is bread and beer again, with vegetables and maybe some fish from the river. Meat, for ordinary people, was a treat, not an everyday thing. And then the evening, which, with not a single electric light anywhere, was nothing like the evenings you know. No screens, no scrolling, just family conversation, music, and stories told in the gathering dark. People played board games, especially one called Senate, which they loved so much that they were buried with it to keep playing in the afterlife. Oil lamps existed, but they were dim and expensive, so most people simply went to sleep not long after the sun did. You climb back up to the roof, rest your head on a curved wooden headrest, and fall asleep under a sky absolutely crowded with stars, then do it all again with the next dawn. So step back because the whole picture has quietly turned upside down. The myth is whips and slaves and endless misery. The records show people with set work hours and days off who called in sick, complained about their bosses, ate dinner with their families, played games at night, and went on strike when they were shortchanged. So what did ancient Egyptians do all day? Mostly, they did what you do. They woke up, ate breakfast, went to work, grumbled about it, took their days off, and went to bed tired just by the rhythm of the sun instead of a clock. Strip away the pyramids and the gods, and what's left is startlingly close to home. The names are lost, the faces are gone, but the people in every way that matters would feel completely familiar.